Hi, friends. Welcome back. I want to ask you something. Have you ever gone through something hard? Something that knocked the wind out of you and you just kept going? Not because you were strong, because you didn't have a choice, because other people needed you, because stopping was just not an option. And then one day, months later, or maybe even years later, you looked in the mirror and did not recognize yourself anymore. And you couldn't really explain why. Nothing dramatic had happened. There was no single moment you could point to, except there was. There were. There were dozens of them. You just never stopped long enough to feel any of it. What I know now, and what nobody told me then, is that what I was carrying had a name. And that name is grief. Not just the kind of grief that we have when we lose people, though I've lost many people and I understand that grief as well. But the grief we have when we lose ourselves. And I had felt that. It was the grief of me losing myself 1 year at a time, one role at a time, one emergency at a time. And I carried it in the only place I had left, my body. I turned 40 in 2013, and I want you to know something about that version of me. She had it all together. Her career was strong, her marriage was solid, her son was thriving. Yeah, that was me. And I was at the top of my game. I was on that proverbial mountaintop, and I knew it. I felt great. I was the woman the other women asked for advice. I had a system for everything. I was basically operating at peak human capacity, or at least I thought so. But by the time I was 44, I was a completely different person. And I didn't even notice it was happening because I was too busy holding everything else together to notice that I was falling apart. Here's what those years looked like from the outside. A successful woman, a recent promotion, a son in high school doing really well, playing basketball, a husband navigating his own hard season, but really being able to handle that. And I was handling it all. I was showing up every day for everyone and acting just fine. But here is what that looked like from the inside. In 2015, I lost my mom. She died in August at my home on hospice with me taking care of her. I was with her all the way till the end. And in that same 3-month window, I had already lost 2 other family members whom I loved dearly. And I would go on over that 2.5-year span that was to come to lose a total of 5 family members, including both of my parents. And through part of that, my son was in his senior year of high school, one of the most exciting times. So what did I do? I just kept going. We had senior photos, graduation parties, college plans, setting up his future. And I think that year, I cheered for him so much harder, probably than I ever had before. I gave it everything that I had left in me because this was his senior year. And because that's what moms do, right? I would not have traded a second of it. But I want you to understand, there was nobody cheering for me. Nobody was asking me what I needed during those years. No one was noticing the weight that I was carrying because I was carrying it so well. And every year that I did not stop to grieve, that weight went somewhere. It always does, doesn't it? Grief does not disappear when you ignore it. It just relocates. In a few minutes, I'm going to tell you where mine went, and I'm going to tell you what finally made me stop. So stay with me. We're going to get to the good stuff. In November of 2017, my dad came to visit at Thanksgiving. I knew he hadn't felt great, but I didn't understand fully how sick he actually was. And when I realized it, I felt terrible. I had been watching him from a distance and telling myself that he was okay, but he was really not okay. I spent the next 5 months managing his medical appointments, his finances, his burial arrangements, because he wanted to prepay his funeral and plan his own services. I sat with him at my kitchen table and we did it all. We put me on his accounts, him on my accounts. We planned his funeral. I helped him get everything in order, all of it, while also working full time and trying to be present for my husband while he was navigating his own hard stuff, trying to be there for my son, while also having a really hard season at work because I had just taken a promotion. My dad died at my home in April of 2018 on hospice after I had cared for him for weeks. It was one of the hardest times of my life. And you know what I did? I went back to work the next week. And I'm not telling you this because it was brave. I'm telling you that because I genuinely didn't know what else to do. Sitting still felt very dangerous to me. So I just kept moving. At the end of that year, we sold our family home, the home in which my mother-in-law had passed away, my mom had passed away, and my dad had passed away. The home in which we had raised our son until he graduated from high school. And then in 2019, my husband's career changed again and he retired, which was a big adjustment for both of us. And then in 2020, the pandemic. We live in a rural area. And when everything shut down, the isolation was unlike anything that I had ever experienced before. I was scared for my husband. I was scared for my son, who was still having to go into work because his job required it. I was lucky enough to get to work from home. And for 3 months, I did not see my son in person. I didn't get to hug him. I had never in his entire life gone that long without seeing him, hugging him, holding him. I want you to sit with that for a second, because I know some of you lived a version of that too. The isolation, the fear, the not knowing, the going from being able to manage everything to being able to control nothing. By 2022, I had gone from 140 pounds to at least 240 pounds, probably more, because I just stopped weighing. And this was not because I stopped caring about myself, but it was because I had spent 7 years putting myself last, and my body was the only place that the grief had left to go. Here's the thing about carrying grief in your body. It's patient. It'll wait as long as you need it to, but it will not leave on its own. You have to go back for it. In October of 2022, I was 47 years old. I stopped at my bathroom mirror that morning and I looked at the woman standing there, and something in me said, enough. It was just a quiet, exhausted, clear-eyed recognition that, oh my God, she needs help. She has needed help for a long time, but nobody's coming to give it to her. So she's going to have to give it to herself. And here's the thing I didn't understand then that I do understand now. What I was grieving was not just my parents. It was not just the pandemic and the isolation. It was a version of myself that I had lost somewhere in those 7 years. The woman who knew who she was, who had energy left at the end of the day, who felt like herself in her own body. Identity grief is real. It doesn't come with a funeral or casseroles or cards in the mail. Nobody's setting a schedule to check on you at 1 month, 3 months, and 6 months later because nobody can see it. But it is grief. And it's the one that gets talked about the least. If you have ever survived something that did not kill you, but quietly changed who you are, and then found yourself one day not recognizing the person in the mirror, that's what it is. That is the grief that nobody named for you, and you probably couldn't name yourself. But I'm naming it now. So here's what I want you to do this week. Just one thing. I want you to write down the years, not in detail. Just make a list of the years that were hard, the years where something changed, the years you kept going when you probably should have just stopped and given up. And next to each of those years, I want you to write one word. What was the one word that would describe everything you were carrying that year? Not what happened, but what you were actually carrying. Because naming it, we all know, is the first step. Naming it takes away its power. You can't grieve what you've not named. You have to acknowledge it. And you can't heal what you're pretending was not very hard when you know it was. Every year that you keep carrying unnamed grief is a year that it stays in your body. It stays in your decisions, in your relationships. It doesn't fade on its own. It just gets heavier. You do not have to figure out what to do with it today. You just have to name it. That's the whole assignment. I went from 140 pounds to 240 pounds or more in 7 years. And it was not a weight problem. It was a grief problem, one that had nowhere to go because I never stopped moving long enough to let it out. Nearly 100 pounds later, and I'm still going. We'll see where I end up, by the way. I can tell you that the weight was never really about the weight. It was about everything that I had not let myself feel. And when I finally started feeling it, the rest began to follow. Your grief may look different than mine. Your years may have different names, dates. But if you've been carrying something heavy for a long time and wondering why you feel so far from yourself, this might be why. And it has a name. And that name is the beginning of getting yourself back. Drop a comment and tell me this. What year was the hardest one that you kept going and made it through anyway? Just the year. That's all you have to say. You don't have to explain anything. Doesn't need details. Just drop what year was your hardest year below. Subscribe if this is resonating with you. A new video every week, and I'm not going anywhere. If anything in this video made you think it might be time to finally stop and do some work with some real support, I have a link in the description to book a free call. There's no pressure, just a simple conversation. It's there if you need it. Next week, I want to talk about something I've never said out loud on this channel. About my season of life where everything felt like it was falling apart all at once. And how I finally understood why I kept getting in my own way. That one is next week. I hope you'll come back. And I want you to keep going because your next chapter is worth it.